No, but there are certain people, we won't name any names, that I think are kind of really shy. I know that they're fairly kind of shy people, but then when they play, like you said, it's like they just come alive a little bit, and they don't necessarily become sort of arrogant or super confident, but they just look comfortable, and that's something I absolutely love. When you see someone who maybe is a bit socially awkward or shy, basically, and then they get on stage, and then you kind of feel that they're... Because I kind of feel like that myself. When I'm on stage, I think, oh, this is like home, you know, this kind of feels right somehow.
I think some people never get to that point, though.
Right,
it's very uncomfortable and it's very nerve-wracking, but they somehow are able to struggle through that, and it's sort of fun to watch that. And sometimes it falls apart for me and for other people, too. But it's putting yourself in that position. Of
I'll tell you what, though. Well, I'll just tell that story of when I first saw you play. And... You sung your tunes, and I thought, oh, great songs and everything. But I think like maybe you'd only just written a song and you'd forgotten the lyrics, or you couldn't remember the chords. But I remember thinking, oh, he's really comfortable with it. And I actually, when you came off stage, I said, oh, that's really good. I like the comedy as well. And you're like, no, it wasn't comedy. It wasn't intentional. No, it seemed almost like you worked into your act, like. Not that you're deliberately going to forget the words, but if you do forget the words, that you're just going to have fun with it, you know. Because there's no point in stressing about it, you know.
No.
Make it part of the performance, you know. Not necessarily comedy, but just make it part of the experience. That this is me performing this song now, and on this particular night, I've forgotten the words, or I can't remember what chord it is.
I think an audience can pick up on that too. If you're too into making everything perfect, and you get aggravated when things go wrong. Then they're not going to connect with you so much. I mean,
that's right.
There's the virtuosic performer.
Yeah.
You know, there's that person who's amazing to watch, and everything is note perfect and just incredible. But there's also the person who's more, I guess, what you would call a natural or unsophisticated, and that person definitely has a place in performance too.
I love watching those people. It's great.
You know, I think that's more my style. I'm never going to be a virtuoso at anything, having started songwriting seriously, 2 years ago, dedicating myself to it. Then how am I ever going to get to a level where somebody who's been playing in band since they were 12, 13, 14 years old, playing with all sorts of different amazing musicians and having all these different opportunities for training. I mean,
I don't know. I wouldn't worry too much about technical virtuosity. I don't think it's...
I don't.
No, I'm saying I wouldn't even... I mean, you can admire it, but I don't know. There's some people who are amazingly technical, but kind of boring, or you know. I mean, I've always, when I was growing up, I mean, I was born in the 70s, but I grew up listening to the 60s, and I consider myself a 60s person. I always preferred, for example, Jimmy Page to Eric Clapton. I like early Clapton, but Clapton's solo is too smooth. And Jimmy Page, if you listen to Led Zeppelin carefully, there's actually quite a lot of mistakes, and there's loads of scrappy bits of guitar, but it just seems more real somehow.
It is more real because Eric Clapton ripped off everything from everything.
Right, yeah. But, I mean, I like Cream though. I mean, Cream are a great band.
And then he decided it was just easier to rip everybody off. Still an amazing
but also
musician,
it's smooth, isn't it? It's a bit too smooth, yeah.
Yeah.
But no, I mean, going back to performers, I mean, when I watch people and I see that they're vulnerable, I just love it. I just think I have huge admiration, and I think we should have admiration for performers.
Any performer.
It's bloody difficult,
right?
You know, even a 10-minute open mic, although that's not too difficult, but
it's really difficult for some people.
Putting it out there, yeah.
The first time you ever get up on stage, and I think everybody should do it at some point.
So do I.
Everybody should perform something.
Yeah.
Just to feel what it's like, either a monologue or something that they've created.
Yeah, I think there's two things everyone should do. Yeah, is perform, hopefully something they've created themselves, or cover otherwise, and try and write something. So ideally, do both of them. Or try and create, because I write. I'm more of a kind of prose or blog writer at the moment, story writer rather than songwriter, and it's kind of a bit painful sometimes. I mean, writing 4 or 5 hours at a computer without without too much of a break, and you're it's really soul destroying. But then you see the result of it, because you wouldn't really get that with songs, would you? Because songs generally don't take as long.
No, some of them do.
So they do, yeah. Do you tend to write them in one sitting, or?
It depends. Sometimes it just hits you and whoop, there it goes. But I was working on this song that I finished this week for probably 10 days. And just working it over and over again in my head. Different ways to sing it, different combinations of words, rhymes, and all that.
So you get the inspiration and then you do craft it a little bit, so you've got a bit of both going on.
Yeah, if you're running out of things to inspire you, then, because you're not going to be inspired at all times, I like to grab my little bits of inspiration, little snippets or nuggets, wherever they are, and then you can go back and pull them out of your vault.
That's right.
At any time, and then put the craft work towards them.
Do you walk around with a notebook, or do you have any when you travel? Because you travel around with your teaching, so. I
have a notebook, which I carry whenever I travel, but then the best thing to do is just voice memos, and I also write a lot of things on my phone. So half a song here, half a song there. Maybe it works, maybe it doesn't.
And what I would say to people who maybe haven't written much, or just don't disregard anything. You got to get over that barrier of being embarrassed.
If it's good, it's
stupid.
Yes.
Because good is totally subjective. I mean, okay, when you've written a song, if you ask 20 people to listen to a song, there'd probably be some consensus. But at the ideas stage, that's the beauty of it. There's a guy called John Cleese. I don't know if you've ever heard of Fawlty Towers, the famous sitcom. Anyone who's English who's listening to this? Monty Python?
Yeah.
Monty Python?
Yes.
Yeah. He did a really good talk about creativity, which seems to have disappeared from YouTube. But if I find it again, I'll put a link on this video.
It's probably because it was pirated, and he likes to sort of keep control of
his
ideas.
He is a bit mercenary, isn't he? Yeah, it's true. No, but he was saying this is really good advice. When you're creating, you have to be like a child. Children tend not to disregard things. And then you have to, he said kind of jokingly, you have to then be an adult when you're putting it together.
Right.
So you just be a kid, just ideas here and there, and then at some point structure it. But of course some songs don't even have structure, that's a whole other argument. But
if you want to wake your creativity, you have to find that inner child, for lack of
no, I know what you're saying.
So when you're walking...
It's a curiosity.
Curiosity, or just... lack of filter and lack of worry so much. I think one of the best things to do is, as you're walking down the street, just skip every now and then. Do something that you're not supposed to be doing as an adult, and it awakens that sense of excitement, happiness, joy, and sparks creativity. So laugh at stupid things and laugh at yourself.
That's a lesson for life as well. I wrote in this blog post about how basically conservative society is. We're kind of told we live in this liberal society, but we live in a society where you don't have to do much to be controversial, let's face it.
No.
And it's... I don't know if you've ever heard of the book called The Artist's Way by Julia Cameron. Do you know that book? Have you read it?
I've read little bits of it.
Two things that stood out, and one is called the Morning Pages, and it's an exercise where you have to write 3 pages of anything every morning. This is more for prose, it wouldn't be for songs, but
you could write a song a day, something.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, a lot of people have done that, just write a song every day, and don't worry whatsoever if it's good or bad. The other one was what's called an artist date, which is when you essentially take your artist off for a date, so you just go off somewhere, and you just try and get into that mode. Obviously it's a lot easier, say in the summer, go to the park or something like that. And you just it's all about getting in a different mode, creativity. You just got to get in that mode, and you got to spend time in that mode. Give yourself 3-4 hours, go to the park, sit down and be the artist.
I'd rather have 12 or 16 or
right,
or
okay, or 4 days, yeah.